August 18, 2025, Washington, D.C., a day that may be remembered as a turning point in the war in Ukraine. Today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House, joined by a powerful delegation of European leaders. The stakes could not be higher, with the future of peace, security, and sovereignty in Ukraine hanging in the balance. Zelensky arrived in Washington with an extraordinary show of support. At his side were French President Emmanuel Macron, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. This united front, described by diplomats as a coalition of the willing, demonstrated that Ukraine is not standing alone in these talks. The arrival ceremony itself was symbolic. Cameras captured Zelensky stepping onto the White House lawn, greeted by Trump with a handshake and brief words before the group moved inside. For many watching around the world, the moment carried echoes of past wartime summits, where history was shaped not only by armies on the battlefield, but also by leaders in meeting rooms. Once inside the Oval Office, the conversations turned serious. The main subject on the table: security guarantees for Ukraine. These would function like an ironclad shield, preventing Russia from attempting further aggression once the current conflict ends. Zelensky was direct. He insisted that Ukraine cannot and will not accept vague promises. Instead, he demanded firm, enforceable commitments from the United States and Europe, similar in strength to NATO's Article 5, which guarantees collective defense. President Trump, however, struck a different tone. Speaking to reporters before the closed-door meeting, Trump said he believed peace was within reach. He even suggested that Russia might accept long-term security guarantees. But Trump also signaled a controversial position that a ceasefire was not the immediate priority. Instead, he emphasized speed, calling for what he described as a swift deal that could end the war quickly. This position created a visible contrast with Zelensky and most European leaders. For them, the principle is non-negotiable. Peace must not come at the cost of Ukraine's sovereignty. Zelensky made it clear that any plan involving territorial concessions, or what some analysts describe as land for peace, is unacceptable. He stressed that Ukraine's borders, recognized under international law, must remain intact. European leaders in the room echoed his view. Macron and Merz urged Trump to support an immediate ceasefire before negotiations move further. Ursula von der Leyen emphasized that Europe's credibility depends on standing firm against Russia's attempts to redraw borders by force. And Britain's Keir Starmer reinforced that a peace deal cannot reward aggression, because doing so would only invite future wars. Beyond the political positions, the atmosphere of the meeting carried weight. Reporters noted moment of tension, with Zelensky speaking firmly, while Trump projected confidence that he alone could broker a deal acceptable to both Kiev and Moscow. The contrast was striking, one leader fighting for his nation's survival, the other presenting himself as a deal-maker who could end a grinding war. For Ukraine, the stakes could not be clearer. After more than 3 years of conflict, the nation is exhausted, but also determined. Millions of Ukrainians are displaced. Cities have been reduced to rubble, and the economy has been strained to its limits. Zelensky's demand for security guarantees is not just about politics. It is about survival, ensuring that the sacrifices of his people are not in vain. For Trump, the stakes are also high. His return to the White House has placed him in a unique position to shape global security. A successful peace deal could define his presidency and alter America's role on the world stage. But a rushed agreement, one that ignores Ukraine's sovereignty, risks fracturing relations with Europe and undermining trust in U.S. leadership. At the close of the day, several key takeaways emerged from this extraordinary summit. First, Ukraine remains steadfast in demanding ironclad security guarantees. Second, Trump is pushing for a rapid peace framework, but one that does not necessarily begin with a ceasefire. Third, Europe is standing firmly with Ukraine, making clear that any deal must protect Ukraine's borders and sovereignty. But beyond the immediate headlines, deeper questions remain. Can Trump bridge the gap between Ukraine's demands and Russia's conditions? Will Zelensky agree to negotiations that carry risks for his nation's independence? And can Europe and the United States stay united if their strategies diverge? What happens next could reshape the entire geopolitical landscape. There's talk of a potential trilateral meeting between Ukraine, the United States, and Russia in the weeks ahead. But whether such a summit produces peace or further division depends on the choices made in Washington today. For now, the images of Zelensky, Trump, and Europe's leaders walking the halls of the White House will stand as a reminder how close the world may be to a turning point. The war is not yet over, but the diplomatic battle for Ukraine's future is now fully underway. And as the world watches, one question lingers above all others. Will this be the beginning of peace, or just another chapter in a long and uncertain conflict?